Great challenge. Don't you dare, ref. That's he got the ball.
Yes, everybody, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur. Jack and Dave here to provide you your Twitter Reacts, player ratings. Then after this, we are doing that recap, the highlight reactions over on Big Up, tactical breakdown. Get to wrap up this performance all in an ugly bow. We'll take a look at all the different moments that Spurs could have gotten back into the game. Also, as well, some of the huge mistakes that led to the goals being conceded. So please, everybody, do join us over for that. It's going to be pinned at the top of the chat. It is already pinned at the top of the chat, and it's already in the community section for you guys to take a look at. By joining us over there, you do help us out a ton, by the way, so we would appreciate seeing you guys over there after this stream. Smash the like button as well while you're in here. But yeah, the title of the stream is Did Spurs Deserve to Win, or did Spurs deserve to get something from this game? But how many times have we said that this season? It feels like, you have to go deeper. You have to think about this maybe a bit further than that, because when you kind of suggest, oh, well, maybe we did deserve to win. Maybe we did deserve something from this game. You can only say that so many times in a season. At this point, I'm getting tired of saying that. I think we were saying that plenty of times in the beginning of the season, like the first 10 games, if I remember correctly. We just kept repeating ourselves, kind of saying, listen, there were chances, we had mistakes here and there that led to us, going a goal down or 2 goals down. But at the end of the day, we did deserve something from this. But we've been saying that a lot of times this season, that it's now becoming far too repetitive. And it's also feeling like we have to just look a little bit deeper than that. It needs to be found more context, or need to go deeper into the gray areas of it all. So that's what Twitter is for, to an extent, also just to see what other people have to say about this, and also as well for us to see what you guys think about the performance maybe a day later after you hopefully had some rest over that performance. But I imagine plenty of you did not. Yet again, another loss at home. Dave, player ratings, Twitter reacts, and then the big upstream afterwards. Like I said, wrap this all up in a tight-knit, ugly bow.
I'd much rather be doing that after a win. I think yesterday was an ideal opportunity even to just grab a result and keep that feel-good factor around the place. We failed. And you know what, Jack? I've come to the realisation, when we play well, we don't take our chances to win games. And when we don't play well, we can see too many goals to lose games, and that's just the reality of it. It's a two-folded problem, the back line and the forward line, and that midfield as well. Look, the whole thing is just becoming a problem right now. Doesn't matter what way we play, we're just losing games, really. It's just not good enough.
No, it just, like I said, only so many times can you really say that in a season. Because when you say, oh, well, we deserve something from this game, or we just didn't put away our chances, it kind of alludes to or suggests that Spurs were unlucky. And I would agree. But how many times have we said that? It's just becoming far, far too repetitive. But let's see what some of the people nice and early have to say in the chat here, and then we'll get going with this player ratings. I have Artist T in here. Good to see you, Artist T, saying, I hope you guys liked a post that called out Brennan and Matters for making jokes instead of focusing on the game. Believe me, I do have that there, Artist T, but thank you for, alluding me to it, because I definitely would go and search it right now if I didn't have it in the bookmarks, that's for sure. And it's even a question for when we do a panel show this week as well. It's just, once again, another example of the players' mentality around the club. Alex, good to see you in the house as well. I mean, believe me, man, a lot of people are frustrated with the 18 league defeats. And also I would agree with, kind of Romero's petulant fouling at some points in the game. It just, I don't think was helping the situation. To be fair, there were others that were also kind of doing the same thing, I think in a less or in a more, annoying time. He was doing it in the first half, which, like I said, was just uncalled for and also just wasn't helping out anybody. But then in the second half, there's so many times where players were also just putting in lazy challenges and just making life so much more difficult for ourselves. And perhaps when the captain does it, in Romero's case, gives the suggestion, or allows the other players to do it as well, and it just sets the wrong message to everybody. Drew Zilla's in the house. Good to see you, Drew. Hopefully you're doing okay, my friend. Saying, do we have a real problem with Vicario? Probably talk about that in the player ratings in just a second here, Drew. But my thing with Vicario, that he has these mistakes in him, which, does end up costing us and has cost us a few times this season. But at the same time, I do think he still is an incredible shot stopper that, if it weren't for him, we wouldn't even be in the Europa League anymore. Like the AZ Alkmaar game, that guy single-handedly kept us, at a 1-0 deficit. If it weren't for him, I think we would have been 3-0 down, 4-0 down at halftime. Also, even in the Eintracht Frankfurt game in the second leg, he pulled off a world-class save at one point, to keep us again, 1-0 up. So it's a mixed bag with Vicario this season. He's had some absolute howlers, but he's also, I think, kept us in games plenty of times, which is technically his job. So I think for me personally, it's a bit of a mixed one. Tony Southfield thing, that's okay, Jack. We're all tired. Believe me, man. We're all tired of this. They're tired of the 18 losses. That's for sure. Shemtan is in here as well. Good to see you, Shemtan. Hopefully you're doing okay. And might as well get on with this Twitter Reacts here, Dave. I'm just going to pull this up. So if I can, yeah, thank you, Dave, for doing that for me. I was about to do that on the phone. For some reason, I can't really do it on the YouTube chat here. But everybody, by the way, please follow us at the Irish Y. You can respond to our player ratings. You can also as well get into the comments for it. You're having trouble pulling it up, but we're trying to summarize Tottenham Hotspur to the best of his ability. So please, everybody, do check that out. Follow us on Twitter at the Irish Y. Welcome to follow me as well in case you see anything that I tweet. Most of the time, it's just annoying pictures of myself or in Seattle in case you want to take your mind off of things. But then also follow us over to TikTok. Follow us over as well to Instagram if you want to see the same clips over there in case those are apps that you would prefer to be using. But yes, Dave, we'll start off first with the man that Druzilla brought up here, Vicario. I went for a 5, a 4, a 3, and a 2. I probably could have gone lower, but I think Vicario, in my opinion, takes responsibility to some extent with the first goal. Went right through his hands. It was a good shot from Elliot Anderson. Takes a nasty deflection, but you watch it back and Vicario's there. It just kind of sort of just putters through his hands, just somehow just spills through them. He doesn't really have strong enough fists to them in that first shot from Elliot Anderson. And then the second goal, I don't know what the hell he's doing. I don't know why he thought he could have came out and claimed that cross. It had a lot of zip on it, had a lot of bend on it. I don't think any goalkeeper is getting to that unless he really did make an early jump for it and an early claim for it. And then also he's not even close to the cross as well. He's behind Chris Wood. So it's just, in my opinion, big mistakes from Vicario. The second one, far more detrimental than the first, because maybe the first, you could probably say Spurs could still get back into the game. And also maybe there were some other players responsible for that first goal conceded. But the second goal for me is almost all Vicario for the most part. So what do you make of Vicario's, Dave? I mean, did I summarize it well enough? I mean, a 2 is what you could tell the vast majority of people gave.
Look, one thing I will say is I don't think Vicario has been the same player he was before he went out injured. I think since he's come back from his injury, there's been a lot of rocky moments with the guy. And maybe struggling to come back from the injury to a certain degree. What I will say is, I firmly put that first goal on Pedro Porro. He should have dealt with that before he even got that far. But at the end of the day, it was a shot. It was deflected off Bentancur. Let's not forget that, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But I do agree with you. I think he should be pushing that one away. He did make a good save before that from Morgan Gibbs-White, who looked like he was about to wrap one into the bottom corner. And then that cross that comes in. I mean, it's just unforgivable. I mean, he's just had a rush of the blood. He decides to come for it and then goes in behind Chris Wood. I mean, what's that all about? If you're coming for the ball, show some bollocks and either go and punch him in the fucking head or come out in front of him and punch it away. It's that simple. You literally, do you know what that is? Look at me, I'm going to come out and try and deal with it. And he was scared of Chris Wood. That's why he came in behind him, because he's afraid of him. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Surely all week there would have been clips of balls coming into the box, Chris Wood getting on the end of them. So if Vicario knows he can't come and get it, stay on your line and give yourself a chance of saving the header. What you don't do is just come out and vacate your goals and leave it free for him to tap home, especially, and he's only done that because he's coming behind. If he comes out in front of him, he gets that ball. It's just absolutely brain dead from Vicario. Chicken shit, to be honest with you. Absolute chicken the way he came out for that, and I agree with it too. It was atrocious.
And then there weren't really any other shots that I can recall even after that. So Vicario just does make a huge, sort of claim, for the 2 goals that we ended up conceding. And then there wasn't really too much else that Forrest ended up causing us problems with, going forward. So Vicario plays a huge part in the performance and plays a huge part in the 2-1 result. Now down to Pedro Porro. I thought he was also one of the worst players on the pitch on the evening. I think when I voted myself, I gave him like a 3 or a 2. Same options that I gave for Vicario, a 5, a 4, a 3, and the 2. I thought his crosses were just, I mean, for a guy that usually we rate for putting in decent crosses, I thought it was just all over the place. So many times when he could have crossed it first time, opted not to, took way too long, then it ended up getting blocked or, spilled out of play. Bad giveaways on a couple of occasions as well. Defensively looked pretty shaky, and also just poor decision making, I thought, on plenty of occasions, either when he was trying to play out from the back, just trying to play simple passes to get us up the pitch. And when we did get into the final third, thought he really struggled at times, Pedro Porro, me personally. It just wasn't really the attacking threat that we know he can be. Usually, we often say with Pedro Porro that you get a little bit of an Alexander Arnold type situation where, yes, he can be sometimes a liability defensively, but plenty of games he can make up for it with just how, technically sound he is and just how good he is going forward. Just don't feel like that was one of those games. And I think Pedro Porro was a huge liability this one. I thought he had a howler. And Dave, Destiny Udogie wasn't available for this one, but I think you did say that Ange Postecoglou perhaps made a mistake by even playing him in the first place against a Forest side.
Well, look, I said it in my predicted lineup, Jack. I went with Spence and Udogie, and I said if we play Pedro Porro this game, it's going to end in disaster. It's a recipe for disaster. Because I just looked at the way Fulham like to, or Forest like to play. They like to hit the channels and get balls in the box. So if you want to take Chris Wood out of the game, you've got to be able to stop the balls coming in. And that's where I just thought Pedro Porro was completely wrong option. Yes, Destiny Udogie may have not been available, but then make it work. Put Van de Ven out to left back, bring Davies in, or put Davies at left back, whatever, and put Spence in over at right back. But at the end of the day, it just didn't work. And look, he paid the price for that selection. One thing you don't do when a corner comes in is head it across your own fucking box. And that's exactly what Pedro Porro done. It's absolutely brain dead and it's mind-boggling. The mistakes this guy's making and that he's still getting selected ahead of Destiny Udogie or Jed Spence. I'm sorry, look, I'm a big fan of Pedro Porro. I think he's one of the best technical right-backs in world football. But he has lost all confidence defensively. He needs to be taken out for a period of time. And he needs to watch the game from the bench till he gets that hunger back. Because it's going to keep costing us games, Jack. Not only that, then the second goal, Alanga's just free there to cross that ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's the urgency not to get out there and stop that ball from coming in at source? Do you know what I mean? It's just, and then also the third goal that was offside, I'm pretty sure the ball came from a similar angle as well. You know what I mean? There's just not enough urgency there when Porro gets out there. And often when he does, he's showing them inside because he's looking for other people to come and help him rather than show him on the outside and deal with him one-on-one, which shows to me right now he is a guy playing with fear. You can't keep picking him. Look, going forward, I understand what you're saying. I think there were some great opportunities, get good crosses in, and sometimes he underwhelmed. But I think if we go look back on it, I think, we'll find that probably, delivered some of the better crosses on the day.
Yeah,
that one from Kulusevski where it was cleared off the line, that was him that crossed it. I think Richarlison's goal, fair. If I remember correctly, was that him that crossed it as well. So I'd argue maybe, I do understand what you're saying because there were times when the ball's just rolled out to him, just put it in, he takes a touch, waits for the defender to come across, balloons it off him. I do get what you're saying. I'm not knocking what you're saying. I actually share that frustration. But I think when we go and look back on it, as good as Tell was, as good as Odegaard was trying to make things happen, it was him where people were getting the end of his crosses.
I think he ended up playing in the cross that Richarlison did score. I think the one that Richarlison missed as an open sitter was Odegaard's cross, if I remember correctly. But you are right that also then the cross that Kulusevski did very, very well with at the near post that got saved off the line was also Pedro Porro's cross. So probably I am being a bit harsh by saying a lot of his crosses weren't good enough when plenty of them actually did, lead to very good goal scoring moments. Perhaps you're right that it's better just to focus on just, again, how much of a defensive liability he was in this game and how much he technically has been for a while now. Stevie Frazier saying, afternoon, I'll admit we did create, but I'm just tired of losing. And when Ange says that we were outstanding, I'm getting more and more disconnected. Well, hard to know what Ange can do anymore because when he has tried to dig out the players, people say, oh, he said he would never dig out the players. How dare he? Even though I personally have no problem with that. Actually, I think a manager should do that more often than not, when especially they're just not doing their end of the bargain, really. So I kind of feel for Ange in that regard because either he has to say we played outstanding, which to a degree you could say we did by the stats and by the metrics and by the sheer just look at, the chances created, or he digs out his players for saying, listen, they weren't focused on the 2 goals, 2 massive mistakes, from Vicario and from others, and we just aren't a clinical enough team and we need to improve on that. But then that would be, to a degree, digging out your own players and criticizing them. So I know I've criticized Ange before plenty of times for what he said after games. I just don't know if he can win now with Spurs fans, because he does one or the other, and it seems like we'll criticize him for it.
Look, the thing is, after a game and after reaching a semi, going into a semi-final in Europe, he's not going to come out and criticise these players. He's not
Yeah,
going to do it, especially the way they mucked in for him Thursday night. He's not going to come out and pull them out. But I think us as fans, regardless of what Postecoglou says, there has to be an understanding. This forward line is just not clinical enough in moments in games where we are on top to help win us games of football. I'm sorry, it's just not. And there has to be a broad understanding of that. We can sit here and make what we want of tactics, bring up, stats. Look, they're all contributing. They're all contributing when Kane and Son were hitting 15 and 20 each as well anyway. But the reality is it's not good enough. And last night was evident of that. And I'm not being funny, but I've seen this script before, Jack. I'll go back to that Everton game where Ange Postecoglou changed the up, went 3 at the back. We were 3-0 down. We came back second half, scored 2. Could have had another couple on the day. Didn't make the most of it. But, there's no fear when you're 2-3-0 down. You've got nothing to lose. So you try more things. It's when the game's in the balance where we want to see that. We want to see
true.
us take the ascendancy. And they don't do that. I'm not being funny, but there's no pass for last night. I've seen this script time and time again. I'm bored of it now.
Oh, it is. It is a boring script, and you're probably
Honestly,
right.
my excitement, even when we had the likes of Jose, Conte, Nuno, right? I didn't like defensive football. You knew that. I said that to you. I prefer I prefer players to be brave, play out from the back, go on the attack, hunt that ball and stuff like that. That's the way I prefer football. But the reality is, when we had Jose and Conte, I was more excited. Why? Because we had Kane,
We
we
were,
had Son
or
in
we
their
were in
prime.
games for far more
Yeah,
often.
well, we're in games, but we also going forward. We had Kane, we had Son, we had exciting players that could just unlock defenses. Large parts this season, we really do struggle consistency to unlock backlines. And I know people will look at the stat in the Premier League and go, Dave, look at the goals we've scored. It doesn't add up and stuff like that. But you look at the amount of games that we've lost by 1 goal. We don't have that consistent guy. Yes, like when we're losing games like we were at Everton, we go and score 2 goals to make it 3-2. We don't have the forward line to win us games of football, and that's the biggest thing we're missing. And honestly, even though we've got a guy that tries to play out from the back the way I like, we don't have the execution, or
Yeah,
in the game.
I
I think
agree.
Will Still and other people were doing a great breakdown on Sky Sports last night, saying the exact same sort of thing. Just don't have the execution going forward and stuff like that. And
No.
honestly, what makes it boring is just the skill of our players. There's no consistency there. Bro,
I
average.
I made a similar point very early on in the season about that stat when people were saying, "Oh, well, we have the most goals in the league. We're tied for some of the most goals in the league." It's like I see that, but I'd still argue we are not a clinical side. We do not put away our chances. Even despite that stat, and that's just based off my own seeing eye and just based off having to go through these games with you on such a regular basis. It's just been my constant sort of gripe with this team this season. In a hype saying the difference stopping the ball before crossing, trying to cross in a dribble mode. Wayne Bonner saying, "Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all well." That goal for 2-0 was embarrassing, summed up how the team plays in the league. They've given up completely, just self-inflicted, self-sabotage mistakes. Wayne Bonner for me. He's also said, "I don't know what game Ange was watching, but we
Yeah.
weren't that outstanding. The only reason we looked anywhere near a capable team was because Forrest just let us have the ball. Forrest
Yeah.
let everyone have the ball. That's their game plan. They are a team that actually thrive without it than they are with it. They like to sort of, let teams basically get into their half, commit a lot of players into their space so that they can then punish you on the counter because they have very quick, dynamic players and Alanga as well as Hudson Odoi. And then they have a clinical striker this season in the case of Chris Wood. And then they find other ways to score when they do get those opportunities. And they have also good passers of the ball, guys that know how to move it quickly, that are also clever, like Morgan Gibbs White. So I'd say, Wayne Bonner, it was a very Forest game. I've seen them play that way against every team, and it's
Their
been
game plan.
successful for them this
Yeah.
season. That's been their game plan every time. So I think it kind of goes a bit both ways, if you get what I mean. Like Spurs played the way they wanted to, Forest played the way they wanted to, and Forest, like what show in the Premier League table, they're third in the table for the reason. They are very effective at suffering pressure, playing under pressure, and then just punishing teams in little moments here and there during the game. Something that we used to do under previous managers, actually, to an extent, and Nuno's doing it to aplomb right now. Can't concede 2 awful goals, then say you played well
Yeah.
and deserve to
Wow.
win. Unfortunately, it was the same old Ange ball yesterday. This is why we're going to finish
Yeah.
16th or 17th. I can get with that. I am Storm. Stevie Frazier said we did great at everything that didn't matter, and we were useless at everything that did matter. Um, And then as well, we have Ed M saying, is that caption in the question in the thumbnail real? No, it's not, but it is a very funny one. Good to see Schooler Wage. Good to see George Kadaris and Gavin Mills as well. Appreciate you guys and hopping in and, continue to give your comments as well. And like I said, do follow us over on Twitter and then do join us for the highlight reactions over on Big Up to wrap this whole performance in a nice and neat, ugly bow, please. Romero, Dave, wasn't really that exceptional. I thought in possession, I can't really recall many times that he gave it away, but no real James Madison over the top, sort of passes that he was playing, Toby Alderweireld-esque passes. And just, I think the real issue with, Romero's performance were some of those petulant challenges. In another world, perhaps he could have even gotten a red card. He got away
He
with
was
some
lucky.
nasty ones, and it's just that first challenge he put in, I remember early on, should have
He
been a
was
yellow
lucky not
card,
even
and then he
get
put in
yellow, yeah.
another one that could have been, an orange, card as well. So maybe Ange Postecoglou probably did have to take him off at halftime because he was just a bit out of control.
Do you know what, Jack? This is my frustration to a sort of degree with Romero. Like, I think, if he channeled that, like, obviously he was angry and frustrated with how the game is going, right? He
Yeah.
is. He's just not used to that with Argentina and stuff like that. He got frustrated, and that's why he's out there making them challenges. But if he actually channeled that into driving the team forward, which I think he has the ability to do, I think it'd serve him so much better. And I think that's where a manager does need to get into his ear and say, look, if you can channel that anger into driving people around you forward and stuff like that, you're going to become one hell of a player. And I think that's where someone needs to get into his ear. But look, he was very lucky not to get sent off yesterday, like you alluded to. In possession, yeah, look, he was all right. But for me, it was just disappointing, with him and Van de Ven, the way they allowed Chris Wood just to drift off them all the time without, especially when the ball's out wide. The first thing they should be doing is putting their hands behind them to see if they can feel that striker. And if they can, then they need to turn around and find them. One thing you can't, and it's clear that we got a lot of players that ball watch. I hope it comes up on TIFO with Ben Davies ball watching, and it's just symbiotic again. Too many people watching the ball and not knowing where their man are, and it's just simple communication. If Chris Wood is running off, you pass him on to Mickey Van de Ven, scream at him. It's just simple things we don't do. But look, Romero not good enough yesterday. Lucky to even be able to be taken off at halftime. Should have been sent off.
Yeah. Dave, this is funny. I am Storm that's approaching saying my nickname for Romero is Hungry Hippo because he just snaps at everything that comes near him. I think with Romero, I agree with what Dave you're saying is that he needs to find a way to channel that frustration. But I think that also just comes from him being just a guy, a very competitive person, that when he sees his team kind of going through the same script that they've gone through so many times this season, I think he just gets, loses his rag, loses his
Yeah, but you
head.
can't lose your rag.
Yeah.
If you're a leader and you're supposed to be in that leadership group and everything else, to a degree, yeah, you can lose your rag behind the scenes and in the dressing room, but on the pitch, you have to do the right things, and you even just turn around to people, G some people up. Do you know what I mean? It's just like you can't afford to lose your rag and go and get yourself sent off and throwing petulant challenges around the place. You have to use that frustration and drive your team forward, because throwing out petulant challenges, what does it do? It just makes it worse. It compiles on it. You got to be bigger than that in the moment and drive your team forward. Look, Romero's not the only one giving away stupid ones.
But maybe it set the precedent for others to do it later on in the game, right? It just gave them the free
even
pass.
all season long. Kulu's been a massive villain of it. Johnson's been a massive villain in it. But Johnson annoys me. He gets up, he gets the pressure on in the right area, then just fouls them when they've got their back, when they're facing their own goals. Kulusevski's giving away loads. Porro's given away a few at times. Bentancur gave away a load. Bergval's a serial at it. You know what I mean? There's so many players in the team. Udogie for large periods. So many players in the team that just give away needless, stupid, petulant free kicks.
Yeah, and if he's the leader, he could try to set the example and set the tone more, and also maybe pick and choose, your moments when you want to go through a guy. There are good times when to do it, to maybe set that sort of tone, in
Then you
the
gotta
right
get
manner.
up and start screaming at people. There's no point in going through them and running backwards and just going, "Oh, there you are." Like usually back in the day, Jack. I'm starting to sound like Dermot now, fucking hell. But usually back in the day, when someone comes in with a tackle like that, they get up, they start turning around to their players around them, pointing at them, screaming at them, come on, you know what I mean? G'ing them up a little. There's no point in doing that and then running backwards. It's pointless.
I agree, man.
You're going to do that, like you said, use it to G people up, start screaming and shouting at people.
Man, I agree with that. Phil Coys, good to see you, sir. Destiny 5, good to see you. And then Phil Coy celebrating 19 months as a fan show member. Shout out to Phil, saying, "Big up Dave and Jack. We had moments in the game against Forest, but it was more of the same. A lackluster performance, atmosphere in the stadium. Z's is what he's wrote, or, sleepy stadium." I
Yeah.
think part of that, though, Phil, is like, once again, man, like conceding so early in the game and
That's
then
the thing.
going 2-0 down so early in the game. It is difficult, like for these fans with where their head is already at. We've had some of the most losses at home that I think we've ever experienced, at least in my young
Yeah, yeah.
Spurs lifetime. Some of the most losses that we're ever going to have in a Premier League season. Like, I I understand, like, perhaps fans could try to rise up and, see past it, but it is difficult, dude, it's difficult to just see the same script over and over and over again as a fan, and especially if you're one of those fans that is a season ticket holder, you're not maybe like a tourist fan like myself that, gets to go to one game and you are gonna kinda just sing your lungs out and then be able to go home. Like, a lot of the people that do go to these games regularly, I do feel for them that they have to continue to see the same thing over and over and over again. Like, it would kind of just, I think you would just sort of roll your eyes and go like, "Oh, here we go again," kind of thing, especially conceding once again just so early from like the first attack, like the first
Well,
moments from Forest. It's just, I feel for the fans in that regard.
no, 100%. Look, look, when you're not winning games, right, fans can go into that game and they can be ready singing. You go to Bournemouth, 30 seconds in, how many chances did they have at our home stadium? Sucks the atmosphere and life out of the crowd. You
Totally.
already know, okay, I've seen this script before. We know where this game is heading. You go back to the Frankfurt game. They called everyone get up for this quarter-final, Grant. We get up for it. 7 minutes in, we're
Concede
one
on
nil
the
down.
first attack.
You know what I mean? It sucks the life again out of everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, we've been here before. You can see this early as we did, against Nottingham Forest, 2-3 nil down in how long? Again, we come into it off the back of a good quarter final. Many people go, do you know what? I'm willing to sit back and just see how this goes now going forward to the end of the season. And we're 2-0 down inside, 10, 11, 12 minutes. I mean, and this is the problem. We can keep having a pop at the fans, and look, we've been there before where rightly sometimes I think you can maybe argue that, you can get on to the fans. Sorry, 1 second, Jack.
No, no,
Oh
good.
no, I'll ring Emily back now. One
No, no,
second,
no.
I'll
Ring
just
her, bring her
answer.
back now. I can carry on for your point, Dave. Like, I was going to make the point. Like, even I've watched, plenty of games of, like family members and whatnot in sports, and you'll see like, the someone, pitching or in baseball, and they give up a home run, on like the on the first batter, and you're kind of like, all of a sudden, you do kind of get this eerie type of silence across everybody when everybody's in a jovial mood, feeling happy, feeling good, and then you just see a guy get absolutely clocked outside the and knocked over the fence, and then all of a sudden there does turn into a bit of a just sort of down mood about it. And same with Spurs, man. Like, Spurs just so many times just conceding from like the first or second attack, or just being absolutely peppered inside the first 10-15 minutes. And it is about starting the game off in the right manner, in the right ways, trying to be the team that is, sort of expressing yourself, that is also, causing problems to the opposition team. And I think we did that in this game. Plenty of times we haven't. I thought we were definitely, creating a lot against this forward side, but still just the ability to be, self-sabotaging in so many ways, and so often this season. Vicario, in my opinion, playing a part in both goals, and just conceding those two goals there. Like, it does suck a lot of life out of people. Like, sports is one of those things. It's a very reactive thing. Like, you do react to what has happened. You do react to the conditions in front of you. And if you're seeing your team just getting, self-sabotaging, just making two mistakes that end up leading to goals conceded, it is hard as a fan to just see past that and just be completely blind to that, and just still cheering as hard as you were before that. It's human nature at the end of the day. It seriously is. It's just human nature. And Spurs have really exposed that it is difficult to try to get behind a team that continues to just fall victim to the same self-sabotage and the same script.
And the thing is, the amount of games we've gone behind, again, it sucks the life out of people. And
Yeah.
when we go behind, look, you've got people like me, Phil, who don't believe we've got the forward line to get us back into the game or go and win us that game. It automatically just sucks the life out of me. We don't have that ability to bounce back and be able to go and win games. I can't remember the last time we've demonstrated. So as soon as the opposition scores, it really doesn't matter when. But lately, it's common theme where it's early on and sucking the life out, but it really doesn't matter when. You've got people that look at that forward line and go, well, that's the game over. We ain't coming back into this one. And it's, and like I said, at the end of the day, us fans are still there. Not in the Forest game. We still rocked up for the game. Everyone's still rocked up to watch it. But when you're getting shit like that on the football pitch, when does the onus become on the players to start giving us something to get behind? I think maybe this question's coming around a lot more this season because we're looking at European teams that maybe if they're not even if they're not playing well, the fans are still going ballistic and stuff like that. We're not like that in the Premier League. It's just never has been. And it's like, I'm not being funny, but, we have demands. We expect them to go out and play well, and it doesn't help when you've got managers and players clapping back at the fans all the time. As soon as they score one goal, you've got people running around doing all of this crap. And it's like, I'm not being funny, but when you play bad, but then don't expect any grace if that's what you're going to do because,
Yeah.
you think that one moment is good enough. And we're trying to tell you it's about fucking consistency. So, unfortunately, in years gone by, I might have actually agreed with it to a certain extent. This year, I can understand why the atmosphere is flat and everything else. At the end of the day, you've lost 21, 22 games. It's up to them to now give us something to get behind.
100%. Stevie Frazier even saying, Dave, yeah, at the
Can
moment, I
you
think,
can
yeah,
you just stall for like 5, 10 minutes or 5 minutes? I just need to run something over to my mother-in-law in the car park.
yeah.
That's what Emily
I could just
wanted. I'll
get
be
through the
back in
player
2 minutes.
ratings and then,
I'll be
then just
back
do
in
my
like
thoughts.
5 minutes, lad.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry.
Stevie Frazier saying, yeah, at the moment, I think most of our fans have been more than patient and willing to keep backing the team, but there are limits. I feel the same way, Stevie. And also, just I think as a fan, if you're just continuing to watch the same thing happen over and over and over again, like we're reaching the end of the season at this stage, right? Like it's hard to just see past that. It really is. And I think also as well, I am Storm that's approaching saying, I've already accepted that we're probably finishing 17th. We need that trophy win. Otherwise, heads need to be rolled. Um, when times are good, you are happy. When times are bad, you are sad and angry. That's how it goes. And that's what I find a little ridiculous about some of the accusations of, just get behind the team, kind of no matter what. It's like, well, we definitely do before the game gets kicked off. It's just that then you do react to how the performance goes. You do react to, how the team plays and how the team performs. And it's just a little silly to me that, sometimes we just are being told to just be completely blind to it at the end of the day. But I'm going to go over to Van de Ven's performance here. I thought he played a decent, or sorry, I thought he played a part in the goal conceded, the second goal conceded. I don't think he tracked Chris Wood well. He should have tried to challenge for that header. Don't get me wrong, though. I don't think he was really the problem on the day. It's not like Forrest really had that many chances really in this game. So I gave him a 4. I gave him slightly better rating than I did Christian Romero. Christian Romero, I'd probably lean more towards a 2 or a 3 just because again, the petulant challenges that he had, whereas Van de Ven is not really that sort of type of player. But that he didn't really have to do a whole lot, Van de Ven, other than just try to do better on the second goal. And I think Vicario plays the bigger role in that. The second goal is definitely more his responsibility, but Van de Ven does have the tendency to occasionally let, a player just get in front of him and rise for a header completely unchallenged. And I think that's what sort of happened in the Chris Wood situation. And it's a part of Van de Ven's game that maybe we don't think about or don't notice as much because he's just so well renowned for that pace, for that recovery tackle, for being that bailout, kind of cheat code type player. But when it comes to challenging, for headers and when it comes to challenging in the air, I do think he does struggle, at times and has been a victim of ball watching, been a victim of not knowing, which players are around him in the penalty area. And I think that did play a part in the second goal there. When it came to in possession, I don't think he did anything that tremendous, but I did feel like, he did a good job at times of getting it out to Matisse Tell, getting it out to Jet Spence, pretty quickly. He would just swing the ball around to Matisse Tell. Matisse Tell did very well to show for it every time, seemed to demand the ball and want the ball and did a lot with it, which we'll get on to later. But Van de Ven for me, pretty average performance, if not below average. So I gave him a 4. Jet Spence, I thought was a lot better than the rest of the team. Definitely a lot better than Pedro Porro. Can't really recall too many moments defensively that Jet Spence hurt us or in any way hindered us. In possession, I thought he was fine. Thought he did very well to make either, options for Matisse Tell on the inside. He played the inverted role, which plenty of people criticize, but I think he played it quite well. He was always an option for Matisse Tell to play back into midfield, or he would make then a run, beyond Matisse Tell to have that option that he could play down the line, with an overlapping run. So I thought Jet Spence was, performing his duties quite well, performing what Ange Postecoglou needs of his fullback quite well. And can't remember too many dangerous crosses or anything that he put in. In recent games, he's definitely been able to pick out some players with some good crosses. But, I would say for the most part, Jet Spence was definitely not the problem and was probably the best player in the back line, at least for me, and did a very good job of making those overlapping runs, like I said, for Matisse Tell, who then was able to find him the left side in general was probably our best side on the day, at least in that first half for me. That's just the way I felt about it. Bentoncourt, I'm surprised that people gave him, a 5 or a 4 here, as the majority. Let me know, everybody, but I thought Bentoncourt had an absolute howler, on the day. I thought he was useless, really. In possession, so many bad giveaways. I know Jerzilla is not the biggest fan of Bentoncourt, thinks he's very inconsistent. This probably would support that claim to some extent. This was just a bad, bad day from Bentoncourt. Whereas in the Eintracht Frankfurt, game, I thought he was brilliant defensively, and I thought he was brilliant and being that composed person in the midfield. There were times as well with Bentoncourt where I felt like he had possession, and then there were maybe progressive passes that he could have made, passes that he could have made between the lines in the midfield, more direct sort of balls that he could have played on the floor to players in the forward line. He then just opted for the easy pass, went for like a 5, 6 yard sideways pass that ended up slowing things down. So for me, Bentoncourt, in a lot of ways, was really hindering us. I think defensively, all over the place. I can't really recall too many moments that he actually helped us out defensively with a crucial tackle or a clutch moment of getting stuck in for us. There was actually one stage where he just got completely bullied, for a bouncing ball or a header in the air and just tried to get in front of the player when he really should have just been behind him, let the ball go over him. And then all of a sudden, Forest were breaking on us, but it seems so preventable in Bentoncourt's case. And like I said, in possession, just some bad giveaways, some bad, strayed passes. And when he did have opportunities to play a killer pass to get a move started or to get something going quicker than normal, he opted to go for the easy one, perhaps because he was having a bad performance and he was then playing a bit within himself. And I think for a guy that's so experienced, for a guy that is technically far more experienced than the rest of this team, really, when you think about it, for what he's done in the Serie A, for the Uruguay national team, etc., and just been around Spurs a bit longer than others. I think Bentegor just, for me, really, really, really poor performance. Wayne Bonner saying, I'd like to know where the leadership and communication is on the pitch. What the hell is the coaching staff doing? Hard to say, Wayne Bonner. I think in this game, personally, for me, a lot more falls on the players than the coaching staff. But at the end of the day, when you have this many losses in a season, like it's, everybody definitely is to blame. Everybody takes a part. Hello, lads. After an annoying loss, says MJ, we could have won this game if it was not for the same silly mistakes we've been making all season. And Dave is right. We have no matador in the area. Doesn't look like it. Spotlight on Spurs afternoon or atmosphere works two ways. Players provide a platform for us to get behind. Exactly right. And the fans need to also not allow a toxic atmosphere. I think the fans have been fairly reasonable this season. I completely agree, Spotlight. That's where I'm sort of at with it. The players have to do their end of the bargain. And when you kind of continue to see the same script over and over and over again from these players, it is difficult to not just be a little bit more subdued, be a bit more kind of, down and, not as, again, raving and hollering like, you want to be. Because if you're just continuing to watch the same script, it is hard to get behind it. It really is. And the players just haven't done their end of the bargain, especially in the Premier League throughout the season. And maybe in the beginning of the season, fans would sort of see past it because, they would assume that the players are going to get back into it. The players are going to be able to mount a comeback, which in plenty of times they might have or did. But now, with this many losses, we kind of do sort of know the script, or we've seen a lot of the same mistakes over and over again. Future's bright, future's lily white. Come on, you Spurs. Good to see you in the house. Thanks for supporting us as a member as well. Big up Jack, too inconsistent. He's a 9 or he's a 4. That was definitely the case between this Frankfurt game and this game, Jerzilla. 100% agree with you there. I really hope we win the Europa League, and I do believe Ange will walk regardless. If we can win the Europa, get us in the Champions League, and then get a proper coach and sign 3 to 4 quality players and move on, that's the ideal world. Hey, man, I guess that is ideal at the end of the day. 3 for all saying Ange never seems to pick or set up our team depending on our opposition. It's suicidal. There are plenty of coaches that do that, and Ange, I think, is one that likes to think more about what his team can do versus what the other team might do to them. And it goes both ways. That's certainly the case. I'm just going to rush through more of these player ratings here. Pop Star, very, very, very anonymous performance from him, in my opinion. And as well, I think also was guilty of some bad giveaways at times too, when he could have maybe made the more progressive pass or could have tried to, make more of that line breaking pass between the midfield, opted for the sideways ones when he didn't need to. There were also some moments where, in particular, where I think there was like a goal scoring chance potentially, and Pop Matasar ended up ruining it on a couple of occasions. There was that one where the ball rolled into him. And again, please join us, everybody, over on Big Up after this for the recap and for the highlight reactions. But there's a moment when he received the ball and all he needed to do was just get turned and play a simple, like 10-yard pass in behind for the player where there was no defender there. But all he needed to do is just have a bit of composure, take your time, get turned on the ball, and just play a simple pass in behind on the floor. And he decided to first time balloon it like over his shoulder for I think Richarlison, or whoever, it might have been Kulusevski or Richarlison, and just completely killed what should have been a very, very good move. And I hope we get to take a look at it in the highlight reactions because I thought it was absolutely shocking from Sar, considering a guy that I have defended. But after a game like that, it's definitely hard to defend him. If not, I can't do it at all. He had a shocker of a day, I think, in possession. And then someone who I do rate defensively, Pat Matasar, didn't think he had a great day defensively either. I can't really recall too many moments where he really got stuck in for the team or really was making crucial challenges in midfield to break up play. Just an anonymous performance. But then at times when he did have opportunities to do something in possession, I thought he was very, very negative or also just killing moves, which is even worse for the most part for me. But of course, people can let me know on Pop Matasar because he's a guy that I do like. He's a guy that I do rate. But I thought this was an absolute shocker of a performance. I'd even make the case that he was about as bad as Bentancur was. If you ask me, I thought they were kind of guilty of some of the same thing. Kulusevski, wasn't really too much of a fan of his performance, to be honest. Like I thought in the first half, especially when we went 2 goals down, thought he was again very anonymous in this game. Wasn't really, making impact. Wasn't really demanding the ball, and driving at players or trying to play passes again to sort of get moves started. James Madison is one who I think has been playing pretty well through the number 10, and I felt like we were really missing him in this game. Granted, Kulusevski's only coming back from injury, so I even said during the watch along, like I'm going to give him a bit of a break. I'm not going to go as harsh on him as I probably did with the likes of Bentancur and Pop Matasar. But for me, Kulusevski, especially in that first half, I did not think was very good. He did have that moment from the corner where he had a great header that was saved off the line. I think it probably would have covered up, for what was, in my opinion, a pretty average performance from Kulu. And there was even another stage where he was, needing to just hold up the ball for us, inside the penalty area. It's kind of a bit similar to the Pop Matasar, chance that ended up being killed that I was describing earlier, where it gets played into Kulusevski. All he needs to do is just hold up the ball, and he goes for this stupid flick, to try to meg the player and then gives it away. And the Forest all of a sudden are just running at us, in a counterattack. So for me, I think Kulusevski, Bentancur, Pop Matasar were all just a major problem on the day. I thought they were all very, very average, very, very anonymous, and then at times just giving the ball away so unnecessarily in this one. I think he looked a lot better in the second half, but the first half for me, like I remember saying during the watch along, I was like, I'm sick of all three of these midfielders in that first half. Take all of them off. Like I said, though, Kulusevski, I am not going to be as harsh on because he is only coming back from injury. He's been out for a while. He's a guy that has had a good season for the most part as well. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he will get back to his best at some point. But first half for me from him, I thought was pretty poor. And it's just when we go 2 goals down, sometimes you do want to lean on that number 10, that creative player to try to carry you through the game or get you back into the game. In the first half, he wasn't doing that. In the second half, I think we started to see a little bit better from him. But I would say he was slightly better than Pop Matasar and Bentancur. Pop Matasar and Bentancur, it was inexcusable from both of them. But Kulusevski, I'm just going to give a slight pass to, just because, again, it's only his second game back, right? If I'm remembering correctly. So I think I'm going to give him a slight pass there. Dave, it looks like I'm hearing you in the background now, even though I can't.
I'm back, thank God.
If you wanted to pick any of the three, I was just ranting about Bentancur, Sar, and Kulusevski. I think you would agree with me. The first half, we were ranting about that midfield being terrible. But yeah.
Look, the midfield was just terrible overall. Bentancur sloppy in possession, giving away stupid free kicks. Papa Matasar shit in possession, very negative, passing sideways and backwards. And look, Kulusevski, like you said, he's just rusty. Rusty. What can you pull out of the Kulu performance? It's hard to expect.
Apart from the header,
him just come back and hit the ground running. Yeah, he had the good header, cleared off the line, but again, just not good enough all around.
Yeah. And then on to maybe the more positives of the performances. Matisse Tell and Odebert. I said, while you were gone, Dave, that the left side was probably the best side in the first half. It seemed like that's where the best chances of our moves were coming from, was through the likes of Matisse Tell and Jed Spence. And then Odebert, for me, I thought played pretty well for the most part. You know, he didn't miss the chance that Tell did. Tell missed a big sitter at one point to get us back into the game. Odegaard, I can't really remember too many shooting chances that he actually had, but skinned his man, in my opinion, plenty of times. And he did whip in that cross for Richarlison that, you know, that Pop Montasar and Richarlison got in each other's way for, but one of them should have been able to put it away, and that was Odegaard's cross. So I'd say Odegaard, for the most part, did his job. I would give him a 6, really, to be honest. I don't think he was the problem. I don't think Matisse Tell was the problem. I think they did their part, actually. Maybe Matisse Tell, slight asterisk on the fact that he did miss that big chance.
Look, one thing I thought when I seen that, front three, and one thing I got across in my predicted lineup in general, Jack, was that I think we would see a bit more of a dynamic front three, a bit more, a few more chances created, a bit more excitement. And to a degree, that was the case. I think, Matisse Tell, I thought he had a very good first half. I think second half, he tailed off for a large portion of that second half. He wasn't the same player.
Good point.
But in the first half, again, exactly what we want to see our wingers do. Pick up the ball, drive, beat their man, create problems. And I think Matisse Tell done that, especially in the first half. Odegaard, I'd argue, maybe for the first 30 minutes, maybe a bit quiet. But after that got into the game, he had that cross that nearly ended up in the back of the net. I think he was the one that fizzed that ball across for Richarlison. And again, looking to take on his man, create problems. And I think, that's what I was happy to see. Don't get me wrong. I think there's more to come from these guys. I think if the more we play them, I do think hopefully the better they become. But yeah, that's what I take of it. Don't get me wrong. Not excellent. You'd like them to carry that threat for the majority of the game rather than maybe periods like Phil Coyes was alluding to earlier on in his chat. But in general, I thought they were the brighter sparks. They tried to make things happen, and you can't fault that. A little bit of effort. And I think Johnson and Son now have to... they've got a lot to prove. They've got a hell of a lot to prove. Like Johnson came on, didn't really look too great, to be honest with you. You noticed you were missing Wilson Odegaard. So, I think if they can keep playing like that, I think they start to put pressure on Son and Johnson a little bit.
The slight thing I would say about Odegaard, and to a degree Matisse Tell, because Matisse Tell hasn't shown to be clinical, is that these guys are good creative players for us. They create a lot of chances, but they don't really offer any goal scoring threat of any kind, which is kind of cuts both ways, I guess, to an extent. But I do think they are more creative than what Sonny and the likes of Johnson have shown. Richarlison scored the goal, but man, he could have had a hat trick really on the day. He could have. He put himself in the right areas, but also I'd say like there were times when there were some good crosses put in that he just wasn't anywhere near it. You could put it down to a bit of rustiness, like with Kulusevski, so maybe you would give a slight pass. Just with Richarlison, though, like despite rustiness, probably could have had a hat trick or at least a brace. Like the chance that he did end up scoring in like the 87th minute was probably the hardest of the chances that he actually had presented towards him. And then when he did, when he was asked to hold up the ball, a bit similar to Solanke, I would say, where it's just kind of clunky, not really that good. So for me, Dave, I don't think Richarlison had that great of a day, really.
Do you know what, Jack? I said coming into the game, I had a feeling Richarlison would score. He did score. It took him a while. It did take him a while, but he did score. I did say I had a feeling on him, But you know what? I think that's the difference between him and Dominic Solanke. Even when Dominic Solanke came in, there was crosses coming in. Dominic Solanke still couldn't find a way to get on the end.
Couldn't. Yeah.
Richarlison was. And that's the thing. Richarlison reads the flight of the ball. He can get on the end of crosses. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that ball that came across from Odegaard and he's missed from 2 yards out, that honestly, I was still dreaming about that.
You today. And I score that.
Exactly, Jack. It's just, you can't be missing that as a Premier League striker. There was a couple of crosses that came from Tell as well that he got on the end of, didn't really make the best of them. I have to say, he did take his goal well, but for me, that's the difference. If you've got two wingers that are putting the ball in the box, you just need a guy that can get on the end of them right now. And Richarlison is that guy. Even when Dominic Solanke came on, he couldn't get on the end of them. So, and I would say again, bring up a little stat in Richarlison's favour to a certain degree. 4 goals in his last 5 Premier League games for Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah, his XG though definitely
in the back of the net. But I agree with you. Look, he needs to be more clinical. But how much of that is again down to him being out for so long and only coming back and finding his rhythm? We'll wait and see.
Rabbi saying it's a fallacy to think that Solanke would get the same chances Richarlison got to. There's a skill involved in getting into the right positions. I can agree with that. For all the stat nerds out there, Richarlison definitely took a big hit to his XG, conversion rate, with that one. I think it did have him down for scoring at least 2 or something like that, and he'd only scored the 1. Dave, I wanted to give him like a 3 or something for this one just because, or I think I did end up giving him a 4. Wasn't maybe the problem, but he wasn't any good either. I thought, to be honest, if I'm going to read too harshly into it, I would say this is one of the reasons I just don't see the need to renew his contract. It's because it's not like he really shored things up for us defensively. He nearly conceded a goal from a bad read from a header and also just not realizing, the danger from it. And then, at the end of the game, one of the worst decisions I saw, and there were a lot of bad decisions made by players in this game. That moment where he decided to go for that 40-yard Roberto Carlos swing of the side foot, for a worldy shot when he had multiple passes available to him after we had just scored as well and we're trying to get back into the game, might have been for me the worst decision of any of the players in the game. So for a person that's described as a leader, I thought that was the least leader decision you could have made really in that game, just completely boneheaded. So for me, Davis did not make anything any better in my opinion on the day. But I don't know.
Look,
We don't need to read too much into the
I understand the anger at that decision, right? I fully understand it. It's just a piss poor decision, We were just after scoring. Get your foot on the ball, recycle that ball, put it back in the box, put the pressure on. By him fizzing that, you're allowing the goalkeeper to take 30 seconds to a minute to get the goal kick underway. You sort of alleviate that pressure. It's absolutely brain dead and stupid. But look, how many times have I accused Davies of this in years gone by? It's nothing new. I expect it from him. But apart from that, one other area that really fucked me off with Ben Davies that he's actually escaping a lot of criticism for. Could have went 3 down before we even scored. He lost out a header to Morgan Gibbs-White, which is inexcusable in itself, especially as him being a centre-back. But then continues to ball watch and then goes, oh shit, he's running behind, I better go. It's unbelievable. And it just reminds me of years gone by. The fact that we're even considering extending his contract. What ambition do we have at this football club? Anyway, enough for him. Look, at the end of the day, he didn't do too bad, but there were a couple of bad decision-making moments that sums up his whole Tottenham career, to be honest.
And then Danzo, I thought, was better, actually, because Danzo, there were times when nobody was coming towards him. Nobody was showing, for him to get the ball. And he was brave. He would still just venture forward. He would force Forest players to close him down. And then he fired a decent shot at one stage, played some good passes. One of them.
That ball into Sarr was unbelievable. It was that touch from Sarr that ruined it. But that ball from Danzo was unbelievable into Sarr. I'm pretty sure we'll get it on the big up.
Yeah. And so I thought Danzo was fine. So I gave him a 5. Really.
Look, he came on, he tried, he was positive, right? He was positive. In fact, we're talking about centre-back shooting. His was even better than Ben Davies. But yeah, no, look, Danzo tried when he came on.
So there we are.
What I will say is, what concerned me a little bit last night, just quickly on Danzo, was a couple of long balls they played where he completely misjudged it. And, going up for the header and the balls dropped in behind him. That concerned me a little last night.
Perhaps we could give that to a little bit of rustiness, too, like we did with Kulusevski and the likes of Richarlison. Let's go through some of the Twitter stuff here. Again, everybody do follow us at the IrishY. Plenty of good clips that we put up, and also as well just opportunities for you guys to get involved in the player ratings, and then do follow us over to the big upstream afterwards, please. Michael saying, since the injury crisis cleared up at Spurs, they've won 1 in 7 games. That win came against Southampton. Jesus. Dan THFC saying, just put £1 on Vicario claiming a cross in 2025. And then Huncho, Tottenham are now 1 loss away from tying the all-time record for losses in a season.
You've got Liverpool coming up. I think West Ham are still in there. Palace, who better. I mean, look, we could very well break that. And if we do, we are so lucky to survive in the Premier League.
And then Sam saying, as soon as this popped up on screen, I knew it was going to end up on my feed. A few moments later, they realized they're on camera, and the smiles quickly drop from their faces. We're 2-0 down, by the way, everybody. And these guys are laughing and joking as if they were at the darts earlier on in the season. It just screams again of just the lack of care, the lack of mentality, lack of leadership. Technically, James Maddison is supposed to be one of the leaders as well. What I would say, too, is, it's just like, how many times, can Spurs fans be told, by the players, oh, you got to get behind us, you got to, get up for us, you got to get for the team, you got to show a good atmosphere. And it's like, well, this is your attitude when you're 2-0 down. Look at the Spurs fans behind them. They look pissed off. They look angry. And then these are the players that are warming up. And it's it goes both ways here. It does go both ways. You got to do your end of the bargain here, lads.
I mean, that picture sums up Tottenham Hotspur, though. We're 2-0 down. These players are laughing. Look at the agony the fans are in. You know what I mean? It sums it up. I wonder just quickly, did Sam think of me straight away? Because I guarantee you he goes, Dave's on that straight away. Dave will hop on that straight away. I know he did. I know he did. But honestly, it's absolutely disgraceful, But I've argued these guys don't care. A long time ago when I seen them at the darts and we were in the midst of losing games and people said, Dave, you're crazy. Drop it. It's boring now. This, that, and the other. Okay, but it's why we're losing games of football. This sort of attitude, this sort of fucking mentality, it's disgraceful. Look at them having the time of their lives. That shows to me they do not feel it the same way we do. They just don't. They couldn't care less.
I just think, I don't think the players can ask us or, James Madison calling, Spurs fans a Wally or, in Johnson's case, criticizing, Spurs fans or not showing any love back in any way. I don't know. Like it goes both ways. It's like, if this is your face 2-0 down inside 33 minutes or whatever, like, geez, man, like at some point, like you have to also take responsibility yourself. Like, it's just ridiculous to me. It really is.
Look, these two guys have a really good friendship with inside the dressing room. Fair play, but honestly, I don't think they're good for each other, Jack. I just don't.
You and I get along, Dave. You and I have crack jokes and stuff, but like you and I weren't really joking around as much like during the watch along. So I don't know, man. I just think it cuts both ways. Like I think it just goes both ways. Like there are fans in the stadium that probably are good friends with each other that are watching this right now that probably are finding it hard to crack a joke or whatever. Like, like people are pissed off, watching.
But the thing is,
these guys aren't.
And like the thing is, you might have some people go, look, they're just having a joke or whatever. They're human. And it's like, yeah, but perception is also a massive thing as well. Like, with that, they leave people like me and my perception of what I've seen, it leaves it open to me being right at the end of the day to a certain degree, or other people being right on their perception on, like, let's not forget, Roy Keane pulled out Maddison, by the way, a guy who's been decorated in the game with Champions Leagues, Premier Leagues, FA Cups, you name it, right? The guy has it to his name, along with numerous accolades, from his peers, fellow managers and players, well recognized within the game. He criticises James Madison for exactly what we've been trying to say about consistency and stuff like that. He comes out, scores 1 goal, and he's shushing him. I mean, it sums up the guy. Brennan Johnson, criticism from the fan base for not doing a lot of parts of the game that is required of a winger, scores a goal, comes out, shushing the fan base. They go to the darts, all of a sudden, fuck off, you're a Wally. They have no respect for Tottenham Hotspur or the fans. They have absolutely zero whatsoever. These are just guys enjoying their life. They're not sitting there thinking about trophies, winning every game week in, week out. James Madison, since he's come to Tottenham, we talk about him being inconsistent on the pitch. He's been doing golf. He's been doing darts. He's fucking cracking jokes when we're losing games. When we were going through an injury crisis, because of his poor performances, he was sitting on the bench watching other people struggle with injuries. I don't know how many YouTube videos he's done this year. There was another pool one he's done this year. Every time I turn on YouTube, this fucker's on a channel. I mean, and this is what I keep saying. Perception matters. If you're losing games of football at a club like Tottenham, all this shit should be stopped. It should be no more. Concentrate on your game. And people go, that's harsh. They're allowed to live their lives. Okay, but when Man United were winning and everything, when Man City have been cleaning up the last few years, do you see their players out doing all this shit? I don't. I never did. And when they were losing games, there was a collectiveness to stop all the outside noise and get yourself back on track. That's not at Tottenham Hotspur. I'm sorry, but that's fucking disgraceful. You look at the pain and the anger on them fans. And not only that, the money they've spent on their tickets. And these guys are laughing that money all the way into their bank account. And God, it's great. You don't even have to win games. It's fucking brilliant. It's disgraceful.
Yeah. Artist T saying what annoys me most is that there are people that took time out of their Monday nights having work, school, or a flight or train to catch the next day to watch them joke while being 2-0 down. Exactly right. That's what I mean, Artist T. It's just like there are fans in the stadium that are probably friends with each other. They're, normally have a good time, have a good laugh. They're pissed off, and yet these are what the players are doing on the pitch, the guys who actually can make an impact. Good to see Shikari Shock. Good to see Tyler as well. Hopefully you guys are doing okay. And then Ilmatic and Limpy Down Under and Ryan Gloria. Patty Power, just always a funny account, by the way, to go. I'm not going to play the clip, but, please do check them out. I do think they are very funny, especially in times like this. They have the best sense of dark humor in times like this. Also, another good clip was Brendan Johnson's last 40 shots. I just want to say, take a look at that. I retweeted it. I retweeted it. So follow me on Twitter, Jack_Kennedy, and just, take a look at it. Anybody that makes the claim that this guy should be a striker, just watch back those 40 shots. I think the guy is bang effing average. And a lot of the chances that he does put away are in fact happens. Like, in the ones that he spurns are chances that I made the claim. I think I did a quote tweet. I said Brian Mbumo puts away more than half of those chances. And I don't even think he's like an elite striker or an elite player of any kind. I just think he's a good, high standard Premier League winger of like a good metric to judge someone by. But he puts away more than half of those chances that Brennan Johnson is missing. So again, for me, Brennan Johnson finds a way to get at the right place at the right time. But boy, does this guy do very little. I actually think I wouldn't even say Brennan Johnson's clinical. I'm going to say that. I don't even think he's a clinical player at the end of the day. And that's saying something about this team. Watching Matty Tell and Odebear in the era of robotic wingers,
Yeah.
I mean, it's all we can hope for. But what I would say is watch PSG, because that's where you really get to see, bright and, elusive wingers, at the top of their game. But I would agree with that. Jamie Carragher, by the way, everybody had some things to say on Ange Postecoglou, saying Jamie Carragher says Ange Postecoglou is consistently talking about the same problems in every interview, but his job is to fix them. It would worry me if I am a Tottenham fan. The manager says the team are always playing well. Would you agree with Jamie on that, Dave?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it concerns you
Or is
as
he
a
doing
fan.
the same thing that Conte, kind
Look,
of just throwing the manager under the bus?
Look, I don't think Postecoglou believes they're playing well. I think he realizes that there's a lot of weak, maybe fragile characters within that dressing room and they need protecting. I think that's the route that he's gone down, Jack. And the reality is, whenever his job's been on the chopping block, they've saved him. You look at Frankfurt the other night, the Coventry game earlier on in the season, when it seems that Ange is just, hanging on, all of a sudden the players step up and deliver a performance. So, I mean, it's a hard one to know, but look, I don't think Postecoglou believes it. If he does, it's actually delusional and quite concerning, But I don't think he does. I think he is out there trying to protect these players because I think he knows the characters are weak.
Yeah. Mark Goldbridge, Spurs have scored the same amount of goals in the Prem as Arsenal, but like I said, we are not a clinical team, in my opinion, despite that. And also, we just don't we make more mistakes than the likes of Arsenal do in terms of conceding goals. Jay Harris saying Spurs have made a double substitution at halftime with Danzo and Davis replacing Van de Ven and Romero. Seems slightly strange because if you wanted to give Van de Ven and Romero a rest, would you even bother starting them in the first place?
No, not really. I wouldn't. Look, I can understand what Postecoglou was trying to do. I think he was trying to keep more or less his defensive unit out there and use that as a stability to grow into the game. Sort of like maybe shut it up for the first 15, 20 minutes, completely backfired. And I think this is where Postecoglou maybe needs to understand, or maybe has the lack of experience around European football. There needs to be a recognition that off the back of a Thursday night game, especially more so than your Champions League games, there's a hangover on a Sunday for the first half an hour of teams. It was the same under Pochettino when we were in Europe. If we got on the weekends, for the first half an hour or so, there'd be a bit of a lull, a bit of a hangover. It takes a while to get into your rhythm. I do think maybe he would have been better off. Look, I'm surprised he didn't start Danso. Someone like Chris Wood thrives on balls into the box. In my predicted lineup, I said, I'm not sure. Romero could struggle today. Not, it's something difficult. Van de Ven as well. Not quite sure. I think Danzo coming in is the right guy to be able to just go and compete with him in the air. That sort of old school defender. I think Postecoglou got that wrong, and I do think it probably shows his lack of experience of having Europe and domestic football.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Wheelsy saying, what's similar between me and Spurs? We're both struggling in the bottom half. if you know it.
Do you know what? Great joke.
Yeah, no, very good. I figured to brighten the mood somehow. Matt L. Spurs, I think, going a bit reactionary, but he's just saying if you booked your flights and accommodation for Bilbao, I would not trust any of these shit houses against any opposition at any level.
Do you know what, lad? It's hilarious because I said to the missus after the quarterfinal, I had to sit her down and explain once in a lifetime, may never ever get something like this again in my lifetime. If they make Bilbao, I need to try all avenues to get out there, and we need to try and make it happen. And I explained why and everything else, so she fully understood. And I said, I got a bit excited. I said, look, will we do it now? And she goes, no, you know the club you support. She goes, they let you down most weeks. You're angry every weekend. She says, I'd hold off until they actually make it. It might be a little bit more expensive, but we'll make it work. She says, I'd rather pay it that way than actually lose out, and then not make it at all. So, It's hilarious. Big up. That was a good comment, that.
Dan, annoyingly, this thought has just come to me. Our Frankfurt may be just shit. And Shira, people. Well, I found it funny that he wrote that, but at the same time, everybody also was hyping up Frankfurt, before that.
Yeah.
So I think you know what I mean, Dave. And Jira saying people will all put the blame on Ange for this. By the way, well, there's the expected goals actually on SofaScore was a bit higher than that. I think it had it down to like 2 point something, 2.14 or something like that. And also, I think we had 22 shots, not 18, but still, yeah. The stats are
I
the
think
stats, but like Forest, this is the funny thing. Forest, they've been this way all season. Like this is kind of a lot of their games. Like they will have a low XG, low percent possession, very few shots, and yet they find a way, to beat
the
teams.
thing is, I also look back at the game and I wonder how much of our stats are fluffed up because Forest game plan was executed inside the first 20 minutes. At the end
Right.
of the day, they wanted to go there, grab a couple of early goals, sit back and protect the lead. Once they're sitting back and protecting the lead, you're going to have all that ball. You're going to create more
Yeah.
chances. Whereas if they didn't have that, them goals and the game went on longer, would we have played so well? Would we have created so many chances? I'm not quite so sure. But I do think you can look at that, though, and you can say it's one thing is clear, you know, it's hard to put it all down to Ange last night, but the reality is 21 defeats. I mean, at what point does it start becoming him? But also I think you could take a look at it. Even when we do play well and we create chances, we don't have the killer instinct in the forward line we once possessed, and we don't have the quality.
Yeah.
And I think what you're seeing is you can take both from that. But look, it's certainly not a good indictment of Ange. No one should be out here using that to defend Ange Postecoglou. We lost at the end of the day, and this is what people need to understand. You can pull up stats to say this, that, and the other. At the end of the day, it's just an L, and that's all we
Yeah.
care about. Doesn't matter how, why, or whatever. It's an L.
There are a lot of people that just care about the wins and losses, and which are the most important stats at the end of the day. Cody Mack saying no one will remember we finished 17th if we win Europa. Like if they won't, it would be an all-time outlier season. A Europa win wouldn't get mentioned without the shambolic league form, in my opinion. Part of what would make it so special is how unlikely it looked on days like today. I kind of agree with the fact that even when West Ham won the Europa Conference League, I do distinctly remember them stinking it up in the league that year. So it perhaps would be the case that Spurs fans would be delighted with the Europa League win, as would I. But, maybe there would also just be, kind of the thinking of like, and also we won it despite looking shocking for the majority of the season as well. But Dave, do you disagree on that? I just got a chuckle out of that because I sort of, I think of the West Ham time that they won the Conference League, and I still remember how just terrible they were in the league that season. I think they finished close to something like 17th.
Yeah, they did. Look, I agree with it and I disagree with it. I don't really know how I feel because part of me does think that if we win a Europa League, I think, it releases the emotions and the pressure, that's been on this football club to get over the line and get over a trophy. And then I think karma heads will prevail to a certain degree. And if you're Postecoglou, you can then revert back to, well, look, the injury crisis, etc. next year will be different. But then again, with how often he's gone after fans, the likes of Maddison and Johnson have called out fans and that to an etc. I think there's that good grace has sort of waned to a large degree. Look, what I will say is, I think if, and it's a big if, we're still miles away from it and we do win the Europa League, I do think there has to be calm conversations around it. Like, if we win the Europa League, can't go, we won the Europa League, just move on, forget about fucking everything else. 21 losses in a season is a massive, massive fucking problem, especially your domestic campaign. And you have to take that into account heading into the following season, because next season, if we win the Europa League, we'll be in the Champions League, you're going up another notch altogether. The games are even tougher. Does your league form get worse off the back of it? And I think there has to be real conversations around. Look, you would just hope that people internally come up with the right bloody answer. Honestly, I think the more we lose games on the run, on this Europa League run, I think the more people will go, look, thanks for the Europa League, part ways.
Limpy Down Under saying everyone says they don't care before the league game, then they do care after the league game.
Not me. I always make a point to say I care about every game of football. Pre-season friendlies, I care whether we win or lose. I had people going mad at me earlier on in the season, over pre-season. Same with Jack. At the end of the day, I've said this time and time again, if we want to be a club that wants to go and win, consistent honours, we can't be picking and choosing what competitions we want to prioritise on performing and stuff like that. We should have the aim to have a good squad to be able to go after all four. That should be the aim. We can't pick and choose. We just can't. So don't put me in that bracket, Limpy, because you hear me before every game. I want to win. I don't care who it is.
I've just said that I just care about winning games regardless of style or anything like that. That's a mode that I lean towards. I don't care about attacking football, or anything about that. I just like winning games at the end of the day. I love a good 1-0 win against Fulham, as I said a million times. Archer, 18 league defeats, one more, and that will be our worst ever in a Premier League
Yeah,
season. Good to see you, Archer. And
big up
Tartan
Archer.
Spurs. Thanks for joining us, Tartan Spurs. Appreciate you. And then Derek Hutchinson has also joined the house as well. Good to see you,
Big up
Derek Hutchinson.
Conrad beyond 72. Good to see you.
Conrad, also good to see you. Absolute legend. Been with us a long, long time. And SDFC, Benny. But let's get through some more of these. Only a few more left, I believe, here, everybody. So just bear with me. Ein Moment. Billy saying it's disrespectful to waste this many crosses at Easter.
So true. So true. That's brilliant. I love Billy T, you know that. He's honestly, I could never meet the guy or ever have to listen to him speak. His Twitter account alone should be hailed. It's brilliant.
Jay saying, has anyone seen Archie Gray? The treatment of him is an absolutely abysmal. Dave, I mean, there was an opportunity, I think, to play him in midfield. You and I spoke about it on the members preview.
This is what winds me up, Jack. I think when you look at the Premier League games, look, we don't want him to throw the games, of course, and stuff. Like, when you're making rotations, it should be in the name of remaining competitive. And you think bringing in fresh legs helps keep you competitive rather than play tired legs and stuff. But look, there was a massive opportunity, even midway through that game when the midfield wasn't working. You could see Bentancur was off it, sloppy. How much of that was down to tiredness and stuff like that. I think there was a massive opportunity to bring Gray into that midfield, and for one purpose only, to see whether we need to spend money in that position again in the summer, or whether this guy's the answer going forward. And I guess if you don't do that, how are you going to know your answer?
Yeah, Madison and Johnson from Billy.
What are you laughing at? You fucking fool! What is he laughing at? Bro, what is he laughing at?
Yeah.
I just, did you just see that?
I just missed that. I just missed that still.
What is he laughing at, bro?
All right.
Honestly, spot on. That's the way we feel it. It's absolutely disgraceful. Absolutely spot on.
Liverpool away, West Ham away, Villa away. We're genuinely coming 17th. The 17th in a trophy prophecies actually be getting fulfilled. No context, Tottenham. There they are, laughing and joking.
Let's have a good giddy up. Good time, boys. Good time. Big time, Charlies.
Craig, 18 losses after 33 matches. 18. More loss, 50%. More than 50% being losses in a Premier League season.
I've never experienced a season like this where we've lost so many fucking games.
Losing half your games. Like, more than half your games. Like, it's relegation. Like, it is. Matisse Tell created 4 chances in the first half, the most of any player on the pitch, being let down by his teammates, according to the Spurs Express.
I agree.
These Porro deliveries into Richie have been really good, which begs the question why we haven't crossed to Solanke once this season. I found that funny, but I also don't think that's entirely true. I think it's also about being at the right place at the right time, but I did find that funny. And also Porro's deliveries were decent, but I think Odebear had some good ones as well, and so did Matisse Tell. Barty saying no European semifinal is worth watching this.
Do you know what? Honestly, Jack, I thought, the European semi-final, I thought, going into yesterday's game and stuff like that, not like, of course I wanted to win, but I thought if we lose, the high of being in the European semi-final will really carry me. Honestly, it hasn't, lad. It hasn't. And I'm starting to come around to that, is it really worth? Because at the end of the day, we're feeling like this more often than not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Europa League has given us temporary reprieve.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's just then about getting to that final, because then if we don't, it won't feel that worth it. David saying, Odebear and Tell serving it up for the pitch.
Yeah.
Very funny video.
That's what I see. That's what it looked like yesterday. Honestly, that is what it looked like, man.
That's very good. That was probably my favorite on the day. We spent so many years of the drought saying I take 17th if it means winning a trophy. So the universe decided to let us know what that actually would be like, and it probably won't even let us win the trophy either. Yeah, Billy.
Do you know what? Billy's absolutely spot on. That's something that, look, loads of people, I've heard it loads of times. I've seen it written out loads of times and stuff like that. And I've always said, I don't know the reality of that, I've always said that, the reality of it, I'm not sure that's what you would want and stuff,
It's more painful than you realize. Yeah.
It is so painful. And I think hopefully the one good thing coming out of it is that you'll never ever hear that be said ever again, because we are feeling it. We are miserable.
Came from the lane. What guys want Ange to do? These are always great. Richarlison had more service from Odegaard and Tell and Solanke's had in months.
Yeah, because look, Solanke's had Johnson and Son being supplying him. He hasn't had Tellen and Odegaard supplying him. He's had Johnson and Son, two complete different players that when they get the ball, the first instinct is to come backwards or play inside. It's not actually get on the ball and meet them, man. I fully understand that. And look, that's something that maybe we've been trying to highlight when it comes to it's Brendan Johnson's case, especially, being getting on the ball, making things happen. And I think, that's why you get a large clamour now of people calling for Odegaard to start over him, because at the end of the day, Odegaard gives you more of what a winger's supposed to do.
But it goes both ways.
I do feel sorry for Solanke to a certain degree, but even last night he came on. He didn't get on the end of any crosses that came in. He was on the pitch for a good, 15, 20 minutes?
Well, he was on maybe when Johnson came on. So,
that's true. But there's also been games this season where crosses have come in. He hasn't been anywhere near them. Or when he's got on the end of them, he hasn't really converted them at all. And look, the fact that Johnson's coming in at the back post, stealing 16 goals this season, it begs the question, why isn't Solanke sliding into that 6-yard box and putting a few home?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was going to say the same point. It was like, as much as I agree with Billy, it's like it also goes both ways, though, where also Solanke has had opportunities in certain games when then he's just done nothing with them, nothing. So it goes a little bit both ways for me. And I like Solanke, so I tried to be fair. Kaylee Davis saying, when is Ange going to be sacked? Kaylee, it looks like you're reaching the breaking point here. Archer saying, bring back Christian Gross, all is forgiven.
Christian Gross, fucking hell.
Dan THFC, we're officially safe from relegation. Let's get the limbs out. Pretty funny how literally 90 minutes will decide if Ange is our best manager for 40 years or the literal worst. Never seen a season like it.
Yeah.
Objectively,
well, actually, technically, he can be both. He can still, factually in stats, he can be the worst and the best we've had in 40 years. He can actually be both.
Two competitions. Yeah, if you look at
it. And honestly, that would be the biggest Spursy team ever. That would 100%. that would be the definition of Spursy moving forward. That would be used to whip us everywhere. How can you have your worst season in 40 years, but also your best? You are Spursy.
Oh, and just proper Spurs in it. Kulu THFC, objectively, this is not on Ange. That's what some people think. Alex saying, looking at Spurs fans' opinions on Tell is wild. It's either he's incredible or we absolutely should not sign him. The Spurs Express, Nuno Espirito Santo, like he was just being respectful, but it's amazing. He actually shook hands with Ben Davis, after the game. That's fair play.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't. If anyone knows the context, Ben Davis got him sacked.
You got me sacked, and we've beaten you. Eat that.
Well, maybe he did that really to just rub it in. Maybe Nuno's that much of a savage. Maybe he's that
being
much
a bigger
of a savage.
person sort of thing, Little smile and a wink when you shake the hand.
Yeah, he really is. Look at the smile. Look at the smile there.
Yeah.
Fair.
He's probably like, thanks for the favor, Ben. You done me a favor.
Fatmas saying, unlucky Ange, tough place to go, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Honestly, the longer this is going on, the more it's hurting me. If I don't have this light relief, it hurts, but at the same time, it sickens me that we're such a joke and everyone gets a joy out of it.
By the way, everybody do follow us on Twitter. Last thing here, you can see some of the clips that are uploaded. Got some decent reactions from people there. So in case you want to see any clips from various streams, especially post watch alongs, panel shows, pre-match build up, all that stuff. So please follow us over on Twitter. But we're going to head on over to the Big Up platform. Dave, anything you'd like to add or anything that, might have missed? Covered, a lot of it. And we're about to wrap this all up in an ugly bow over on Big Up.
Honestly, the week's going to get tougher. I think Romero's come out with an interview saying that he wants to move to Spain. That hurts. You've got Liverpool at the weekend going for the league title. We've already got slapped up there. This week is going to get even tougher. I would love to sit here, bring positive, good news. It's just not the case. It's going to get worse. Honestly, I'm going to try and detach myself to a certain degree just to next Thursday and see what happens. It's all about the Europa League now at this point. But look, thanks for tuning in. Like Jack says, check out these clips. Maybe you can play a bit short, give you an idea of what's being said, and you can maybe go and look for them or whatever. But, Jack does work hard to break down clips and stuff like that and put them out. So if you can, just run the likes up on them and give them a listen to. And thank you, everybody, for coming in today. Look, it's hard when we're losing, to come in here and stuff like that. I appreciate it, guys.
I don't know if you need to listen to yourself, Dave. It's kind of say some of the same things that you probably have said today, unless you would like to. But it was a pretty good one. I think it was just you sort of saying this game summarizes up our season. From the self-inflicted mistakes to the lack of any potency up top. In terms of putting away chances. So pretty much what we've said a lot, and what you've said a lot this season. I thought it was a very good clip, and something that really did summarize the game well. But please also check them out on YouTube. They are on YouTube as well. So please look out for those.
Right now, what we're going to do is we are going to leave here. The link is pinned at the top of the chat, and we're going to go over to this platform called Big Up. Now, it's a new platform, and they've given us the ability after every Premier League game, a bit like Sky Sports, to be able to bring the clips up on, break them down. We can put arrows and lines on it and everything else if that's what we want to do. But we're going to break down the game last night. And what I like about this, actually, is I think it's important because, look, in and around the game and everything else, we all have our emotions, we all have our feelings. But I think when you actually get to sit there and you get to break it down in a calmer manner the day after, when all that emotion is sort of taken out to a large degree, it's good where we can all sit there and pinpoint the problems together so that we're almost on the same page on the problems that need to be fixed, rather than everybody sitting there going, well, this and that's a problem. No, you're wrong here. I think it's just good for all of us to go through it, and we can all sort of go, right, no, this is a massive problem.
Well said, Dave. Well, we'll see you there in a few seconds' time, everybody. So do join us over there, and then we can forget about this performance, but then also, feel like that we've really well covered it as well. And then we move on to Liverpool the next time. Please, everybody, join us over there very shortly. We'll see you all over. Come on, you Spurs.
See you over there. Come on, you Spurs.